So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Bio Talk on digital innovation and the future of preventive healthcare and medicine. We're super excited today. We had more than 100 registrations, so thank you everyone for joining. For those of you who's the first time that are attending to our Bio Talks, what we do during the District 3 Bio Talks, it's really to provide a spotlight on the life sciences sector from the point of view of experts. In the majority of cases, these experts will be scientists that are themselves entrepreneurs, like the two guests we have today. So if you wanna hear more about the latest trends of emerging technologies and innovation, I'll really recommend you to subscribe to our newsletter. We have BioTalks every month, and so it will be a pleasure for us to keep you having on our events. So while we wait for a couple of other participants to arrive, I'll just like to do a quick check-in, and we'll be sending a poll. I would appreciate if you could answer that for us. It's just to get to know you a little bit better. Okay, so while that is happening, I'd just like to introduce myself. So I'm Anna, and I'm coordinator of the life science initiatives at District 3. I'm a scientist by training, and I'm pretty much in love with science, but not so much of academia. So after completing a PhD, I decided to join District 3 to help take innovations out of labs and really into the market. And I'm gonna be the MC for today's panel, so it's a pleasure to meet you. This is my email address. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions about the panel or District 3. I'll be really happy to connect. What will gonna happen today is that we're gonna go through 30 minutes of questions moderated by me, and after that we're going to open up the panel for questions from the audience. So please join the conversation by adding your questions and comments to the chat. So hopefully we'll have some responses from the poll by now. And so for those of you who are not so familiar with District 3, I'm going to tell you a little bit about us before we start. So District 3 is a leading innovation hub based at Concordia University, and we support technology-based startups to create businesses with global impact. Our services are really open to everyone. You don't need to be associated with Concordia University to be part of the District 3 community. And something else that I would really like you to remember is that District 3 doesn't take any equity or intellectual property from any of the startups that are working with us. We have been around for about 7 years and have worked with over 530 startups. Approximately 30% of those are from the life sciences field. That's very exciting, and this is why we keep on engaging in talking about emerging technologies to keep this ecosystem active. And you will see many of the startups that we work with, they really come from a wide range of emerging technologies. So from things like synthetic biology to microfluidics, all the way to the use of artificial intelligence to help diagnose mental health disorders, for example. And something that is really exciting is that we're expecting to see the number of life sciences to continue to grow. And this is really thanks to a 52 million investment that was done by Concordia University, as well as the provincial and federal government, that has allowed us to open the BioHub, which is a co-working and laboratory space dedicated to startups working in life sciences. So if this is of your interest, feel also free to email me. I'll be very happy to provide you with more information about that. And if you think that's interesting and you would like to join District 3 at some point and use the BioLab, but you feel you're not ready yet, to do that, I want to show you a program that is called the Quebec Scientific Entrepreneurship Program, developed with the Quebec Research Funds. This program is really designed to help researchers explore innovation and entrepreneurship. It's online, it's free, it's bilingual. I know that online doesn't sound very exciting right now, but what we meant with that is it's a program that you can easily complete while you continue your work, your studies, your PhD, your postdoc, whatever it is that you're doing. And this program will take you over 3 different phases. You will start with an ideation and discovery phase where you can explore and refine your ideas for a startup. And by the end of the program, you will be launching your startup. So if you really want to build a research-based startup, I highly encourage to look at the webpage here. The next cohort, the application deadline closes tomorrow, but the application is very easy, so you could manage in a couple of minutes. I will encourage you to look at it. And I also wanted to highlight that this program have created great startups, many of them working on the digital health space. And this has also helped to grow the digital health community that we have at District 3. Which brings me back to the topic of today's panel. So just before we start, one last thing is I wanted to put everyone on the same page and talk a little bit about what digital health means. And here I'm exemplifying digital health using startups that are part of District 3. And you can see that there is really a wide range of applications. When we think about digital health, we usually think about telemedicine, but it's really way much more than that. So there's a couple of applications that could be used, for example, for well-being and fitness, really all the way to support treatment and monitoring of patients. And having really this large community of innovators working on digital health at District 3, we know that entrepreneurs are wondering how the COVID-19 pandemic can potentially lead to lasting transformation of healthcare. And this is really why we decided to put this event together with the great panelists we have. And what we hope to do is really to highlight the importance of the work that clinicians, scientists, and entrepreneurs are doing to innovate in the traditional healthcare system. So without further ado, I'm gonna start introducing Dr. Ezzat Saad. He's a professor of clinical oncology and also the chief medical officer of 360 MedLink. He has over 20 years of experience in oncology and clinical trials, and he really has a trajectory that has demonstrated how scientific research can be taken out of the labs and drive innovation. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Saad. I know he wants to present a little bit of his work, just to give you an overview of what he's been doing. So you would like to share your screen?
Yeah, do you see my screen now?
No, not yet. We go to the green share screen button. There you go.
So thank you so much, Anna, for your nice introduction. I would go straight ahead to what I'm doing now for the past 4 years when I started joining digital health. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of 360 MedLink. It's a Canadian-based company. Our head office is in Montreal. We are dedicated to deliver clinically validated, quality and safe products. We have the 360 MedLink is an international company. Our head office, as I mentioned, is in Montreal. We have 2 divisions, a European division located in Paris and a Middle East, North Africa division located in Tunisia. We have 2 departments, 2 subdivisions of products. One of them is our enterprise solutions. It's mainly dedicated to pharmaceutical industry as well as clinical research platforms. We support both clinical trials and clinical research. And on the other side, we provide educational tools that are being used by physicians, MSLs, and other healthcare sectors. Our biggest division is the patient support division. It is dedicated to digital health for patients. Our flagship product is called TAVI. It has been clinically validated, and the methodology has been initiated by academics in the Montreal University around a decade ago. It's been evolving over the years. It's a tool for patients to accompany them through the treatment journey and the medication, as well as disease prevention. It is not disease specific, it's a methodology platform. It provides humanized virtual coaching aiming at behavioral change and developing self-efficacy. We provide self-monitoring tools as reporting, service map for the services, as others. And over the past 2 years, we added the gamification part.
We're having trouble hearing you. Second, we're going to try to work on this connection. Let me see. Okay, here you are. So we lost you for a second. You're back. Your mic it's on mute. You were telling us about the gamification process, how you're implementing gamification for the start.
Thank you so much. Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
So we introduced the serious gaming, and I think we shall talk about this during the meeting a bit later on, and in details how it changes, how it engages. As mentioned, this platform is not disease specific. It's customizable and modular by different languages, the coachings are are adaptable to the population needs based upon their language and the disease area. Do you see my screen? Because it's a bit like frozen here.
Yes, we can see your screen.
This platform, I'm sorry, it's not scrolling down. This platform, as I mentioned, it's a platform. It's not a mobile app for patients. It's a full intervention. We have the care providers platforms, which is interoperable and linked to different care provider platforms, which is, whether it's electronic medical records, whether it's specific platforms for specific healthcare institutes. So through this platform, it allows the care providers, starting from the social worker, case manager, nurse, doctor, to remote monitor the patient's progress and see all the patient's inputs, as well as active intervention via direct communication, audio, video communication in emergencies and in other needs. On the other side, the third arm of the platform is regarding the sponsor, whether this sponsor is a private sector or a public healthcare sector or hospital institute. It provides data real time so that we can build up trends and analytics, and accordingly go into data-driven, patient-centric approaches. Last but not least, I would like to present our latest platform, which is mainly a platform that was self-initiated very proudly by our technical teams all over the world. It was initiated by our team in Tunisia and Europe, and the team here in Montreal. They decided to provide a community service out of solidarity in these difficult times. It's a COVID-19 app, also modular and expandable. The first version now is dedicated to the pandemic, the rising curve and peak, and then we are evolving to produce the post after flattening of the curve, what we shall need as long-term management between the mental and psychological outcomes after the pandemic, as well as the other needs expected with the real reality of change, which is as soon as the lockdowns are open. This was in brief what we have, the services that we provide for the patients through the innovative digital technology, and I hope we shall go into details a bit later. Thank
you so much. So now I'll pass over to Dr. Dumouchel, who's the managing director of healthcare solutions for Logient. And he's also a part-time medical director of a startup called Chronometric, which raised 20 million in Series B last year. So besides all this work, he still continues to practice medicine through ER shifts, but also telemedicine, and also a DJ on his part time. If that's true, I say he's laughing, so that's probably true. All right, so I'll leave it to you to talk a little bit more about yourself.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for Dr. Ezzat and Dr. Saad for being here today with us too. Yes, I'm a director at a local agency. It's a tech agency. I'm a programmer in my spare time. I do code in React. I use React and GraphQL and many cool services from AWS and GCP. Came to be into technology by first attending hackathons locally with Hacking Health in 2016 back then. Had a startup named StoryDoc, which was a chatbot platform assessing patients' stories. So we could provide documents and their stories to doctors before their appointments to accelerate the flows into our clinics. And then yes, right now we're running a 5-member team within an agency of 150 people. It's a healthcare division. We're creating custom solutions for our customers. And through the different teams of software engineers at Logien, either Java, .NET, mobile, PHP, and of course the front-end JavaScript frameworks. We provide solutions custom-based for our customers, which is an amazing ramp up for any product guy like me to just sink in my teeth into whatever I can come by and really provide the best experiences for our patients and possibly for the physicians when it's targeting physicians actually. So yeah, happy to be here, happy to be talking with you guys, and looking forward to possibly help any startups out there who need some help.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hear also your perspective as a current user of telemedicine.
Yeah.
So just to start, I'd like you to make an open question and just ask the two of you. Maybe we can start with Dr. Dumouchel. How would you define the readiness of the healthcare system to really adapt to digital solutions? Where do you see the major roadblocks?
Yeah, well, current roadblocks with digital health adoption mainly relies within the policies of protecting patient data, and also with, I would say, who's actually paying for those services, right? So we have a finite budget here in Quebec. Hospitals have a finite budget as well. And how do we try to get those cool apps and cool interventions through the apps readily available for our population? It's always a matter of who'll be paying, unfortunately. Some employee-based companies are thriving right now because I think the adoption through the employee-based programs are very much likely to happen faster. But when it comes to public health or public services, it's a lot slower, unfortunately. And even though I think COVID is right now, pumping the whole ecosystem in healthcare, and telemedicine being one, I think, of the fastest, trends right now, and how the current population of Quebec is adopting, brand new communication means with their physicians, or random physicians who can help them.
Okay, so I guess you were mentioning these companies that you mentioned, insurance. Are you talking about Dialogue and these type of companies? Okay.
Of course, there's Dialogue, and there's many of them out there. Maple, EQ Care, many of them out there. I think all of them have their strengths and weaknesses. All of them have a different approach. Some of them, relying mostly on nurses and on chat to pre-assess patients. And then EQ Care is mostly, having patients directly interacting with patients, with doctors and patients. So yes, all those telemedicine companies are seeing a big boom in their current industries, respectively. And I think this is a major trend. I mean, the Quebec government has been looking inward at allowing telemedicine for a while now, but not knowing what kind of budget would be needed to cover all the Quebec's population. is hard for them to predict. And but they're seeing it right now. They're currently, you know, picking up on the numbers and statistics because they've opened regular consults and visit to your family physicians through at least telephone and telemedicine. So we're being reimbursed right now to see you guys, which was not the case 3 months ago.
Okay, that's really good to hear. So perhaps these companies are really also helping open up the way through the more traditional healthcare system.
Yes. Exactly. They're pioneers in telemedicine, and they're opening up, they're foraging and making sure that the application and the ecosystem will be ready once the government is actually agreeing to open up the budget for this.
I see. Thanks. So what about Dr. Saad? Are you still with us? I'm not longer able to see you.
Yeah, I'm here. I just put off the camera. I think it was affecting my bandwidth.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we were having some trouble hearing you at some points. So what about you? What do you think from your experience? You have a little bit more with clinical research, but also have a lot of contacts with patients, and not so much as a medical doctor, but trying to build applications for them. Do you see other roadblocks to the establishment of more digital health solutions in the healthcare system, at least in Canada?
I think Dr. Vincent summarized the roadblocks. What I see, the readiness part, I think that it has changed a lot over the past 8 weeks. So we were seeing very slow progress, and the acceptance and uptake was very much slower than the technology advancements. But nowadays, with the changes, I think that the readiness will be much higher. One of the roadblocks, especially that we were mentioning as the top of the list, is shifting to a telehealth remote communication rather than the face-to-face communication. There will be the cultural barriers on the care provider side and the patient side. And the second will be the uptake of technology rather than relying on the face-to-face communication. The third, for sure, I would elaborate on what Dr. Vincent mentioned, is about the reimbursement, because there must be a very clear system of this type of adoption of telehealth instead of the in-person visits. And the reimbursement model has to be like standardized, I believe.
Okay, I see. And do you see, because you were mentioning also that things have changed in the last 8 weeks. Can you give perhaps a particular example of something that you have seen? So besides the fact that now apparently people are able to get reimbursed by these telemedicine appointments, something else that you've noticed that is kind of helping accelerate this integration of digital innovation?
Well, what we've been seeing is the shift to telecommunication, and telecommunication, I mean, in the healthcare sector, although it's now not regulated in a clear manner, but now you can, most of your appointments are being managed like that. The pharmacy prescriptions are also being managed like that. So it's, although it is in a crisis mode, non-regulated, this shift and this uptake is going very quickly. Another part that I think is evolving but moving slowly is the remote monitoring and self-reporting, because part of the non-face-to-face communication is the self-reporting. Maybe also not standardized at this point of time, but I think with this experience, it shall be moving very fast the next few months.
Okay, so and what about the adoption of medical devices? We were having actually a very interesting chat before we started the panel here with Dr. Dumouchel, and he was mentioning about some difficulties of measuring what's actually happening in the patient's heart or in the patient's, I don't know what, brains while they're at home. Do you want to comment a little bit on that?
Absolutely. So for the medical devices, I think that it will also evolve dramatically the next, I would say, a few months to very few years, because up till now, although there is a high uptake, it is like self-initiated, and the credibility and validity on the healthcare side in accepting the data is a bit questionable till now. But it is a reality that we shall have to adopt very soon. How to standardize and make sure that what you're monitoring through these devices is credible, safe, and because this will be the only tool. So there will not be comparison with the physical examination face-to-face. And the decision making and the management, meaning treatment or surgery, whatever, shall rely much more on this type of devices. The doctors, there is very high acceptance on for the information coming from self-reported from the patients through the medical devices, but I do not believe that the medical decision is based upon that till this moment.
So thank you so much. What about you, Dr. Dumouchel? Do you have another opinion? Would you like maybe to comment as well on the training that is required to use to put this in practice, and maybe perhaps on the regulations?
Yeah, so I think there's a big gap, and when we say, you know, we need to social distance ourselves and make sure there's room, you know, in between each patient's, almost in our waiting rooms in the ER. There's so much room right now also for medical devices to come in and play a big role. Either it's for, you know, monitoring patients while they're waiting in the waiting room, since, you know, we know that some of them might deteriorate in the next 4 or 5 hours while they're still waiting in our waiting room, which is a big problem as well. When it comes down to communicating with them and taking vitals, even on, you know, through telemedicine, I can't wait for the moment when you know, everybody through their iPhones or Androids cell phones can actually, you know, have me listen to their heart sounds and lungs, or through a simple connector can have me see their children's, you know, ears directly. This is a big gap currently, the physical exam, as to how we can help, and medical devices will come in big time, I guess, but the regulations and policies, I mean, every devices like these still need to go through approval from Health Canada. All the standard, you know, protocols and research and clinical trials will still need to go forward. I think there's a bit of the FDA has felt the urgency, and as I think, you know, fast-tracked the approval for many devices. I think Health Canada is also following in that same, you know, footstep. But we need probably to have, you know, in a hospital, I'd say, you know, test fields for some of those devices to actually come in and, you know, have a prototype possibly being tested. And I know for a fact that, you know, the Jewish General in Montreal has, you know, currently a healthcare, digital healthcare division that's trying to onboard some of these, you know, cool projects and apps and devices all at once. They are having their ethical board, you know, currently fast track those approvals as well, but it's not the same for every hospital. And I think, you know, even the CHUM or even the CHUC in Quebec and even the bigger hospitals in Montreal still would need to innovate in having probably like a department for a healthcare innovation, and have those innovations come in directly to be in touch with patients. And we're still a bit far from this, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there's a Transmed Tech. They're trying to do something like that together to bring innovation more to the hospitals. But like it's like you mentioned, it's really a little bit farther away than we will hope it will be. And so you were mentioning that some regulations are being opened up, at least in the US. I'm assuming this was our response to the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So they're fast tracking. What is exactly that they're doing, and do you think that's a potential good opportunity for startups in Canada to jump and get their approval now that it's easier?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say exactly what the procedures are for the FDA, but I know for a fact that, you know, what the amount of energies and people who would normally, you know, look at the applications and look at the documentation provided by startups and companies are being, you know, expanded by, you know, at least twice or thrice the amount of people to do this right now, because they also, you know, they recognize that COVID is currently, you know, the paramount of, okay, we need help and we need it right now. if we can get help through medical devices, through new molecules, through new protocols and applications, digital health applications, well, they're investing tremendous amount of efforts trying to speed and make those processes faster. I'm not saying that they're turning corners a bit more round. Hopefully not, because that will not be protecting and benefiting the population as a whole. But yeah, I know there's a lot more resources allocated towards making sure that we evaluate those technologies faster.
All right. So thanks so much. I'll pass the word to Dr. Saad, and I would like to ask you, looking a little bit to the patient side, do you see that their expectation has changed, that perhaps patients are more open to deal with innovation and maybe less scared of dealing with devices or accepting these new technologies in their medicine?
I strongly agree. I think that the experience, because it was like a life experience over the past 8 weeks, like there is always a resistance to change and slow progress, especially when we are talking of a population. You are talking about multicultural, multi-age. You have a very big chunk of aging population who are highly in need to the healthcare services. I believe this experience has made the acceptance much more easier, and the willingness to change and to learn, because we have very variable population demographics and technical savviness, acceptance to technology, the use of this technology, and so on. So I strongly believe that this experience has paved the path for the future.
Thanks. And what about you, Dr. Dumouchel? Do you see that from the side of physicians, whether perhaps people were before the pandemic were less likely to accept these technologies and they're more open now? Can you comment on that?
Yes, as a working physician, yes, I'm 30 years old, but I'm working with older folks, I guess, and I've seen many physicians right now who needed to change their processes and operations. Like the whole clinics needed to close down. Some of them changed into like COVID specific, triage clinics. Most of us had to go back home and wonder, okay, how am I going to arrange my schedule this week to try to like speak to all those patients on the phone, and most of the companies came running towards our direction saying, hey, like we got this cool telemedicine module, you should probably use it and video conference with your patients. I know for a fact TELUS Health, by working closely with them, and most of the Econometric as well, and most of the providers in terms of digital health that I know of have came up with like, okay, third-party providers for video conference, and that all happened within like a 3 weeks window. They needed to roll up their sleeves and work hard to make those integrations happen, because would you say like, okay, why was not those telemedicine solutions were not there before? And well, as a matter of fact, we all have our product roadmaps. You guys have startups, and these guys, we like, imagine if you can turn around like a 5-person ship in your startup and invent or ship a new feature that will address a particular problem within a 2-week window. It's even harder for TELUS's or for all those big companies to actually do the same. But so we were asking for those a while ago. Some of the physicians were already using some of those solutions to provide telemonitoring or teleconferencing with their own patients. But it just made a huge impact with COVID, because everybody had to do it. Everybody, not like a single doctor could see their patients now in their clinic. The clinics were almost all closed, and we were only receiving what would be like priority and urgent matters. So that really changed the game. And I would expect at this point that this will last and continue to go on after COVID, because I think the patients now are starting to expect this kind of management of their home healthcare. Some of them, from the 20s or 30s are expecting to see their doctors now online. And now that we have the means to do it, well, it'll be a case-by-case per patient decision saying, hey, if you want to be seen online, I'll see you online, from now on. And as long as I can probably do those calls and diagnosis and help you online, we'll do it. You can also imagine that, COVID has had a tremendous impact on all of our mental health. We're all, confined at home. Some of us stressed out because we lost our job. Some of us being stressed out because we have like 14 kids at home, running around while we're trying to work. This is a reality right now. And so I think, mental health as a big space, and it will, when it was only possibly the cause of one or two big companies like Bell with the Bell Talks every February, I think mental health is now becoming more of okay, let's address this once and for all, because it's been for too long put aside, unfortunately, both in terms of what's being developed in terms of molecules and how we treat those mental health conditions. There's always this new cool molecule in cardiovascular health, but we've been dealing with the same molecules almost for like last 20 years in terms of psychiatry. So I think there will be a shift in that matter as well. People are starting to realize that mental health is a big thing, and we need to address it right now. Otherwise, we're not only seeing COVID patients in our ER, but we're also seeing patients that are isolated and feeling sad about this.
That's really interesting. I was listening to that yesterday as well, and it was how the pandemic has made the mental health be as important as the physical health, and how many startups like even Headspace or these startups that were working on meditation and wellness has also gained a lot of visibility, because people have understood that it's really important to work on that as well.
Yeah, and one of the biggest ones that I've seen trending right now is called Big White Wall. And if you guys want to look it up, I think it's amazing.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so let's move on. We're gonna open very soon to questions for the public. So if you have any questions, feel free to share those. In the meantime, I'd like to pass over and ask a question to Dr. Saad regarding gamification and this all giving more empowerment to patients to control their health. And definitely, I think the fact of telemedicine and that they can get access to see care providers faster will also give them empowerment. But I wanted to know what you think about the so-called gamification. If you think this actually works to improve their outcome, and can you comment on that? Or which other strategies can offer digital health to help increase the engagement of patients?
Well, actually, it's not what I think. This is data-driven, as I mentioned very quickly in my presentation on the last tool we have is the gamification part. We initiated this approach as a methodology 2 years ago for a population with the majority above the age of 55, which was against the odds, to uptake the gamification as an engaging strategy. And the engagement here was not engagement about using an app. It was engagement with their health, developing their self-efficacy. And we use the gamification model with incentives, with prizes, collection of points, and so on, with this population in the serious gaming following quests, which is a multi-step task. And this task is mainly about either to input their medication in the app, follow a certain algorithm for their mental health, physical activity, and then achieve points. And actually, we have published results of more than 5% increase in medication adherence. And when we analyzed the sub-cohort using gamification versus another cohort which used other apps without gamification, we had a 47% increase in viral load suppression. So we used the gamification as a methodology to improve clinical outcomes, and the data and statistics that came out late 2019 was very positive. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we use it in a population that you would imagine that they are a bit like above the age that would be very interested in gamification. And it turned out a very positive reinforcing and engagement tool.
That's really good to hear. Thanks. Thank you for sharing that. So let's move on to perhaps more abstract questions before I open the panel. I see there's already a couple of questions posted that I'm going to be asking you, but I would like to hear from the two of you, which recent development in digital health do you think has been a real game changer for healthcare and medicine? Maybe you can choose one or two and explain us why that has impacted you, or why you think that's really a big game changer. Maybe Dr. Dumouchel, you want to start?
So you're asking about technologies in particular, maybe companies that I've innovated. Okay. So I mean, video conferencing is not new, right? Like, we've been doing video conferencing. Telemedicine is not new. Some of us have been doing it before there were any startups or companies. You could do it through FaceTime or even Skype back then. And there's still doctors who do so. What I think will be a game changer for us is if we can provide through like one interface, right? Because the current problem with pretty much all healthcare is the interoperability, right? I mean, we have so many interfaces, so many applications, so many data layers, so many, highways of data being thrown one way, thrown the other, not being interfaced or integrated through APIs with this software or this software. So I think if somebody could come up at least with, I know about FHIR protocols, HL7 protocols, but when we talk about universality, and we need to find this way of, communicating data, making sure that, everybody has access to it, both patients as a transparent mode from what we're doing on the physician side, so that they can have access, be less fearful, and learn about it if they need to. And obviously for us, providers to have access and make sure that not only me as a doctor, as a primary care provider, but also all the paramedical people, everybody from, ranging from physiotherapy all the way up to like social workers, everybody, if we're going to nail this objective of making the patient at the center of our focus, we need to make sure that all the communication channels through software are achieving that as well. And it's a big technology problem. It's a big philosophical problem. Being a programmer, I see this happening through all the, the software that we're building. But I think it's rallying all those companies, startups under one roof, making the right policies in terms of their intercommunication and data pipelines, so that at one point, I think it will benefit the patients at least once and for all.
Yeah, and like we're seeing that now. Of course, we need to know the data. The government needs to see the data. The patients, their people are scared. They want to see the data too, and it's difficult and it's slow. And hopefully, this thing will.
It presents the biggest challenge of all, and it's still unsolved. So people have tried it. I think FHIR and HL7 is near that, but it's nowhere like, a very easy or friendly framework. We need to come up with like a better framework so that somebody who doesn't maybe have that kind of extended knowledge into that particular, framework can also spin a cool application tomorrow and link it up to possibly one of the biggest EMRs in our hospitals. I
see. Yeah. That's definitely. So I'm going to open up for questions here. I see a couple of them. There's one for Dr. Saad, and they're asking that so digital technology can really help reduce inefficiency and cost of healthcare, and also amplify the access to healthcare. And you have this international experience, so not only in Canada, but in other countries. So do you see some communities that are going to be benefiting quickly from digital technologies?
Yeah, I think that many communities shall be benefiting very quickly. The area of cost effectiveness, when we look at ensuring quality and safety, cost is not only the direct cost, the direct cost of the service itself. When we were evaluating different models for cost efficiency, and you see primary and secondary prevention, early detection, self-reporting, symptoms reporting remotely, the time saved during what used to be the physical face-to-face visit, and the time efficiency was reflected directly on the cost. The second thing is that the early intervention through remote monitoring and other methodologies that technology assists the healthcare system was much higher. Like when you can predict the upcoming emergency, you reduce the ER visits, you reduce the hospital stays, the days inside the hospital. So there are different models that are very clear with the adoption of technology, with standardized technology, because till now these self-reporting models, there is no clear standardization. And it is the other side of interoperability. So for interoperability, Dr. Vincent elaborately detailed the problem on the care provider platforms. On the other side, I'm giving the patients a platform at home to monitor remotely and so on, but there must be standardized variables and guidelines, because the self-reporting tools, when it becomes a mandate, not something by choice, there must be standardization and guidelines of the variables.
Yeah, and I guess just to follow up on that, there's another question here asking about the cultural, religious, or like really cultural specific issues that we should take into consideration when developing and expanding in the use of digital tech. So I imagine not everyone will accept this monitoring the same way.
That's very true, and I think it's cultural. I don't think there is a religious part of it, but it's basically cultural and related to the socioeconomic and the social determinants. So it's affected by the literacy levels. It's affected by the I wouldn't say age as a single variable, but age because there's been a habit. I've been used to facing my doctor for 70 years of my life. The acceptance of change is a bit difficult. But as I mentioned earlier, this situation we are in has paved the path for change. So it will make the acceptance much easier. The healthcare systems and healthcare provision varies by country and by availability. And this is where the cultural part might come. So it's not really directly culture as much as it is the availability of service and other factors related to it. However, in underprivileged areas as well as rural areas, remote health is much will be much more acceptable than not being able to achieve the healthcare sector, whether because of distance or because of financial, or nowadays because of distancing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Moving over to another question here for Dr. Dumouchel. Did you have more entrepreneurial experience? And so we wanted to learn from you, what do you think are really the biggest, let's talk about opportunities that entrepreneurs in digital innovations face. Maybe perhaps we can start with opportunities, and then if you want, you can comment also on some hurdles as well.
Yeah, so the healthcare industry is probably one of the ones that are, I say, closed to outsiders. Okay, it's very difficult because there's so many layers of policies and people to approve your product to come in, both from a, and this is all a matter of protecting population, right? So Health Canada, all the way down to approvals from the ethical boards at a local hospital. This is making hard. This is making the way hard for entrepreneurs. And I have so many entrepreneurs around me, asking me okay, can you get me an intro to this guy at this hospital, because you're a doctor, you can probably launch an email and that will work out for you. But in most cases, it's not, you don't have somebody like this that can open so many doors at once in a hospital. I think hospitals are so close to people like this, even though we all have like good intentions, right? Like we want to help and we care to like solve problems for them. And as entrepreneurs, that's exactly what we do. The current hurdles are also, you know, part of the spectrum of funding. I think there's a lot of funding coming our way because of COVID. There were, I think, you know, digital health and healthcare in general was picking up pace when compared to like finance and all of those other industries. But VCs and investors usually have, you know, this scary fear when they're thinking about healthcare, knowing that, okay, this will be a hard to go. Like the road is not as easy as other industries. Right now, like with COVID, I think investors are even more so a bit fearful, even though they should actually invest way more right now because the opportunities are there to be taken. I can't wait for, I think one of the biggest demonstration of what I'm saying is, you know, there's no comparable in healthcare to what Uber or Airbnb is. There's no one company that we can, you know, point out and single out saying, hey, these guys have revolutionized an industry as a whole. And in healthcare right now, it's not happening. Why? Because probably of all the things I just mentioned. And I can't wait for one company to like, okay, in 10 years from now to say, hey, these guys have made it. They're as big as Uber and as probably, you know, Airbnb. They've changed the way we perceive healthcare, just like we now think of taxi drivers or taxi industry, right? Or the, you know, renting industry. So I can't wait for that startup to come alive and show us the way and pave the way for us.
Yeah, me too. To be honest, maybe we should think about an event of really trying to make these doctors that you're saying that are always so close to innovation, to bring them together with the startups and show like cool examples of the nice things that can be done. Mm-hmm. And I guess just one last question before we close up. There's a question here for Dr. Saad. So you were mentioning at some point during your presentation that your company has come up with a new different app to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So in very general terms, can you tell us a little bit about how your company has adapted to this period, commenting perhaps on the team, sales, leadership aspects?
So as I mentioned, this was the team's innovative idea as part of solidarity and sharing with the community. So it was not a business driven app. It was actually a team's decision that they see that 360 Medlink should provide a service to the whole community. And it started from Tunisia up to Europe, up to here in Montreal, multilingual. And my role in it was mainly about the clinical validity of the material inside it. It has the what we are seeing now in so many websites and apps, that the normal tools, which are the education about COVID-19, the self-assessment tools, the risk modeling, as well as facts and methods, what's right and what's not right, what's ongoing now as information. But our decision was to proceed further to have an app which is for the long term, not the short term. So we have mental health modules, service maps, which are adaptable by country and by location. So maybe what's applicable in Montreal is different than the type of services and clinics in the States, different than Paris and Spain, and so on. The second thing is addressing the healthy lifestyle, which is basically about physical activity, sleep, relaxation, meditation modules. And lastly, it's about the upcoming what I would call differentiation between different eras, which shall be coming very soon in fall. Is it a flu or is it COVID-19? And what I'm mentioning is that we have the long-term vision, not the crisis mode modules only. It's what will be the post-traumatic after we start going back to the new reality, because it will not be going back to the normal. It will be a new reality, and how to to interact under a very high self-efficient model with what can happen in fall, what can happen early winter, which we cannot assume right now, but we know that the needs will be very different. So this is, I would say, this is the Teams app.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very, very nice perspective that you're taking there, and actually brings me to one of the a closing question that I wanted to ask. I believe we had a poll for the participants as well. We wanted to get your opinion on one thing, but in the meantime, you should be seeing this question appearing on your screen. I just wanted to ask you about like I said, one last question, and it's thinking about the long term. And what will be the new normal? What do you think that has changed now that will really stay for longer time? Perhaps Dr. Dumouchel, you might start.
So what will change? I think it's all about habits, and unfortunately, the way we probably have those 70,000 people, all in a stadium to watch a baseball game. This could be changed. I'm not saying that we need to confine people. I don't want to, bring anxiety to a whole new level here, but I think we'll probably change our ways of probably, doing the groceries. I expect that, even through healthcare and the way we interact with healthcare will change because of the current amount of fear that's currently being driven in the community by COVID. But also I think it will make way for like innovation to bring like the other side of what we see as probably like, okay, like this is a savior, at least like this is coming in as a savior, just as telemedicine for patients right now is coming in as a savior. It was foreseen. We could have told like, okay, any COVID crisis could have, made a big boom for telemedicine. But it will be unexpected, unconventional and truly disruptive ideas that will emerge from this COVID situation that will lead the new, generation of healthcare applications, and those will stay. And I'm not saying that the current generation of application is not good. I'm just saying that I think there will be still ideas, stemmed from this situation, even from 6 months or a year from now, and that will help us also prevent maybe the next COVID. And I think that will be what will be one of the biggest challenges and primary focuses. How can we make sure that the next time such a disease happens, that we don't need to go back, home for like 4 months and maybe have all the technologies needed, both from a mask perspective, from a protection, like a personal protection perspective, to like, epidemiology tracking to make sure that we can all probably go to the grocery store and not be afraid of going. So, but do we have all the ideas now? I think no. There's probably very good ideas already, taking place through startups, and people are rallying to do them. But we'll have more ideas even though COVID is done. And I think in 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, hey, like this was not only a bad thing for us, like for humanity or for the population, society itself. I think COVID will have had benefits and will have launched us forward and propelled us forward at a faster pace to innovate and make sure that we have all the needed technologies to prevail next time.
Yeah, I see you're agreeing with the public as well, that they also think that more openness to collaboration and innovation will be something that will stay for sure in the digital health space.
Yeah.
So I see that we are already at 2 o'clock. I don't know if Dr. Saad, I just want to give you the chance also to talk about this, some change in digital health that you think that would really stay with us. I will please ask you to keep it briefly because we need to close. It's already 2 o'clock, but we would love to hear your opinion as well.
To be very brief, I think that it will be population and patient initiated. We shall have very soon much more empowered and informed patients, because they will be the ones asking for it. We've been struggling for the past years to develop this type of self-efficacy. Nowadays, it will be a mandate, and acceptance will be very high, and accordingly, the patients will be the initiators of the disruptive innovations in the field of technology, I believe.
Yeah, that's really true. It's great to hear that it's going back to the side of the patients. So without further ado, I wanted just to thank you really for your time and for participating. I think we wanted to leave everyone on a happy note, and this meme that I saw online, I really like it. And let's hope that the COVID-19 is also leading a digital transformation in our healthcare system as well. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks everyone for your questions. Now it was my understanding that perhaps Dr. Dumouchel might like to stay a little bit longer to answer some of the questions. Dr. Saad, you're also welcome to stay. I saw that there are some questions specific for you as well. By no means this is mandatory, really. This is your time that you're giving. We appreciate it so much. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Hope you like it. Thanks.